Maya had always considered their marriage not just a stroke of luck, but an architectural achievement. They had built it for 15 years, brick by brick, beginning in that cramped studio with a leaking faucet and ending in this spacious penthouse with a view of the city skyline. Mark was the ambitious, charismatic facade of their life, an ascendant star in the world of technology. Maya, however, was the foundation and the load-bearing walls. A successful freelance graphic designer, she provided the comfort, the stability, and that reliable rear guard that every careerist dreams of. Their life seemed like a perfect, glossy photograph. They planned vacations 6 months in advance, spent Saturdays picking out farmers' market produce, and spent evenings discussing how it was finally time to think about children. Maya believed in this picture. She believed in Mark. The cracks appeared unnoticed, like a spiderweb on fine porcelain. At first, they were trifles that a loving wife easily justifies. Frequent, urgent business trips to Seattle, new passwords on his phone explained away as corporate security. Strange transactions on their joint credit card that slipped between utility bills and groceries. Once, about a year ago, she noticed a charge from an elite children's boutique. "Mark, what is this $300 at the Little Prince?" she asked, flipping through the statement during dinner. He didn't even choke on his wine. "Oh, that's a gift for the boss's newborn nephew. You know corporate ethics, you have to look the part." Maya nodded. Of course. It made sense. The knot of anxiety in her stomach tightened a little more, but she untied it with an effort of will. She would not be that suspicious wife from a cheap soap opera. The climax came 2 weeks before the grand party. Mark was on edge. He announced that the company was throwing a massive reception in honor of his promotion to vice president. "Maya, this is important," he said, nervously adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "Everyone will be there, the board of directors, key investors. I want you to look stunning. Invite our friends, your family. I want everyone to see my triumph." He asked her to help with some old tax documents needed for his new position. Maya sat down at his home computer, a powerful machine she rarely touched. She was searching for a folder named Taxes 2022 when a strange icon deep within the system files caught her eye. The folder was titled Project Horizon. She knew all his projects. This one didn't exist. Curiosity, cold and sharp, pushed her hand toward the mouse. Double-click. Maya's world didn't collapse with a roar. It simply crumbled into dust, silently. In the folder there were no spreadsheets or presentations. There were photos, hundreds of them. There was Mark laughing with a sunburned nose, holding a blond boy of about 4 on his shoulders. There he was again, embracing a woman with a soft smile and kind eyes in front of a Christmas tree. There they were as a foursome, Mark, this woman, the boy, and a tiny baby girl, blowing out candles on a cake. The dates on the photos went back 5 years. With trembling fingers, Maya opened a subfolder titled Documents. A marriage certificate between Mark Ellison and Sarah Thompson, dated 5 years prior. Birth certificates for Leo and Mia Thompson Ellison. A deed to a house in a Seattle suburb, the very Seattle he flew to so often for business. 5 years. For 5 years he had lived a double life. He had another wife, other children, another home. While Maya waited for him with dinner, he was tucking another family into bed. Every "I love you" he had spoken over these years now felt like a poisonous spit in her face. Her first impulse was to scream, to smash the monitor, to wait for him and hurl all this pain into his face. But Maya was a designer. She was used to working with complex structures. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed an icy rage to freeze her tears. For the next 2 weeks she existed in robot mode. She smiled at Mark over breakfast, discussed the menu for the party, and chose a dress, navy blue, structured like a suit of armor. While he was at work, she methodically copied every file, every photo, and every receipt onto an external hard drive. She hired a private investigator to confirm what she already knew. She met with the best divorce lawyer in the city. And she found something else. In his email drafts, she discovered the actual layout for the Saturday night invitation. There wasn't a word about a promotion. "We're finally making it official. Join us to celebrate the engagement of Mark and Sarah and to meet their beautiful children." The party wasn't for him. It was for them. He was going to introduce his secret family to the world as his only family, using Maya as a prop, an unsuspecting puppet to be discarded shortly after. Saturday evening arrived. The hotel ballroom was bathed in the light of crystal chandeliers. Champagne flowed and a string quartet played. Maya stood beside Mark, accepting congratulations. She felt like a ghost at her own funeral. "You're a bit quiet tonight, darling," Mark whispered, his arm around her waist. His touch burned her skin. "Just nervous for you," she replied, looking him straight in the eye. He noticed nothing in her gaze. And then she appeared, Sarah. She was exactly as she was in the photos, sweet, slightly shy, in an elegant cream dress. The children were with her. The boy, Leo, was a miniature copy of Mark. Maya's heart skipped a beat, then hammered with a frantic force. Mark excused himself and hurried toward them. Maya watched from a distance as he kissed Sarah on the cheek and swept the little girl into his arms. He led them to a group of key investors. Fragments of phrases drifted to Maya. "My biggest project." Finally all together. He didn't introduce them as his wife and children yet. He was being careful. The time for speeches came. Mark stepped onto the small stage. He was beaming. "Friends, colleagues, family," he began, his voice brimming with confidence. "Tonight is a special night, a night of new beginnings. I am grateful to all of you for your support on this journey." Maya stood in the shadows by the wall, next to the sound engineer's console. The young man at the controls glanced at her nervously. An hour ago, an envelope with a very generous amount of cash had convinced him to fulfill her strange request. "Now," she said softly to him. The boy nodded and pressed a button. On the massive screen behind Mark, where the company logo had just been glowing, the image changed. The music died. Mark continued speaking for a few more seconds, oblivious to the change, until a collective gasp of astonishment rippled through the hall, turning into a frantic murmur. "What the?" Mark turned around. On the screen, in high resolution, was his marriage certificate to Sarah. Clear names. Dates, seals. The slide changed. A photo of Mark and Sarah in the maternity ward holding their newborn twins. He looked so happy. The next slide. A family portrait in front of the house in Seattle. The next. Scans of plane tickets to the Maldives in the names of Mark and Sarah, dated during the week Maya thought he was at a grueling conference in Tokyo. The silence in the hall became deafening. Mark froze, his face turning gray, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. He stared at the screen as if it were his own tombstone. In the crowd, Sarah pressed her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She looked from the screen to Mark, and realization slowly, agonizingly, dawned on her face. Maya stepped out from the shadows and slowly ascended the stage. The click of her heels was the only sound in the room. She walked up to Mark, who was unable to move, and gently took the microphone from his limp fingers. She turned to the audience. Hundreds of eyes stared at her. Among them were her friends, her parents, his boss. "Good evening." Her voice was calm, icy, devoid of all emotion. Mark got a little confused in his speech. He meant to say that this evening is not about a promotion. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. This evening was intended as a celebration of his engagement to that charming woman in the cream dress, Sarah Thompson, who, as you can see on the screen, has already been his legal wife in the state of Washington for 5 years, and those lovely children are their children. Maya looked directly at Sarah. There was no hatred in her gaze, only a tired sympathy. "Sarah, I don't think you knew, I am Maya. I have been Mark's wife for 10 years, and I live in this city in the apartment we bought together." Sarah let out a stifled sound, like a sob, and swayed. Someone caught her. Maya turned back to Mark. He looked small, pathetic, a deflated balloon, All his polish had vanished. "Did you want everyone to see your triumph, Mark?" she asked quietly, though through the microphone every corner of the room heard her. "They see it. You built 2 houses, 2 families, 2 lives on a foundation of lies, but you forgot that I am the architect of our reality, and today I am dismantling it." She placed the microphone back on the stand. The sound of it hitting the metal was like a gunshot. "Consider this my gift for your promotion. My lawyer will be in touch on Monday." Maya stepped off the stage and headed for the exit through the parting, stunned crowd. She did not look back. Behind her, a roar of voices rose. Someone was crying. Someone was shouting. She heard Mark's boss demanding an explanation. She stepped out into the cool night air of the city. The air felt incredibly clean after the stifling atmosphere of that hall. She hailed a taxi and gave the driver her address. Back in the empty penthouse, she didn't turn on the lights. She walked into the living room, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the sofa, looking at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling window. Her phone was exploding with calls and messages, but she turned it off. She was alone in the ruined house they had built for 15 years. It was terrifying. It was painful. But for the first time in a long time, Maya felt she could breathe deeply. The glass castle had fallen, and now she could begin to build something real, on a solid foundation, by herself.